Bless Me Ultima by Rudolfo Anaya. Uno. Ultima came to stay with us the summer I was almost 7. When she came, the beauty of the Llano unfolded before my eyes, and the gurgling waters of the river sang to the hum of the turning earth. The magical time of childhood stood still, and the pulse of the living earth pressed its mystery into my living blood. She took my hand, and the silent magic power she possessed made beauty from the raw, sun-baked Llano, the green river valley, and the blue bowl which was the white sun's home. My bare feet felt the throbbing earth, and my body trembled with excitement. Time stood still, and it shared with me all that had been, and all that was to come. Let me begin at the beginning. I do not mean the beginning that was in my dreams and the stories they whispered to me about my birth and the people of my father and mother and my 3 brothers, but the beginning that came with Ultima. The attic of our home was partitioned into 2 small rooms. My sisters, Deborah and Teresa, slept in one, and I slept in the small cubicle by the door. The wooden steps creaked down into a small hallway that led into the kitchen. From the top of the stairs, I had a vantage point into the heart of our home, my mother's kitchen. From there, I was to see the terrified face of Chavez when he brought the terrible news of the murder of the sheriff. I was to see the rebellion of my brothers against my father. And many times, late at night, I was to see Ultima returning from the Llano, where she gathered the herbs that can be harvested only in the light of the full moon by the careful hands of a curandera. That night, I lay very quietly in my bed, and I heard my father and mother speak of Ultima. "Estás sola," my father said. "Ya no queda gente en el pueblito de las pasturas." He spoke in Spanish, and the village he mentioned was his home. My father had been a vaquero all his life, a calling as ancient as the coming of the Spaniard to Nueva Mexico. Even after the big rancheros and the Tejanos came and fenced the beautiful Llano, he and those like him continued to work there. I guess because only in that wide expanse of land and sky could they feel the freedom their spirits needed. "Qué lástima," my mother answered, and I knew her nimble fingers worked the pattern on the doily she crocheted for the big chair in the sala. I heard her sigh. She must have shuddered too when she thought of Ultima living alone in the loneliness of the wide Llano. My mother was not a woman of the Llano. She was the daughter of a farmer. She could not see beauty in the Llano, and she could not understand the coarse men who lived half their lifetimes on horseback. After I was born in Las Pasturas, she persuaded my father to leave the Llano and bring her family to the town of Guadalupe, where she said there would be opportunity and school for us. The move lowered my father in the esteem of his compadres, the other vaqueros of the Llano, who clung tenaciously to their way of life and freedom. There was no room to keep animals in town, so my father had to sell his small herd, but he would not sell his horse, so he gave it to a good friend, Benito Campos. But Campos could not keep the animal penned up because somehow the horse was very close to the spirit of the man. And so the horse was allowed to roam free, and no vaquero on that Llano would throw a lasso on that horse. It was as if someone had died, and they turned their gaze from the spirit that walked the earth. It hurt my father's pride. He saw less and less of his old compadres. He went to work on the highway, and on Saturdays after they collected their pay, he drank with his crew at the Longhorn, but he was never close to the men of the town. Some weekends, the llaneros would come into town for supplies, and old amigos like Bonior Campos or the Gonzalez brothers would come by to visit. Then my father's eyes lit up as they drank and talked of the old days and told the old stories. But when the western sun touched the clouds with orange and gold, the vaqueros got into their trucks and headed home, and my father was left to drink alone in the long night. Sunday morning, he would get up very crudo and complain about having to go to early mass. "She served the people all her life, and now the people are scattered, driven like tumbleweeds by the winds of war. The war sucks everything dry," my father said solemnly. "It takes the young boys overseas and their families move to California where there is work." "Ave Maria Purissima," my mother made the sign of the cross for my 3 brothers who were away at war. "Gabriel," she said to my father, "it is not right that La Grande be alone in her old age." "No," my father agreed. When I married you and went to the Llano to live with you and raise your family, I could not have survived without La Grande's help. Oh, those were hard years. Those were good years, my father countered, but my mother would not argue. There isn't a family she did not help, she continued. No road was too long for her to walk to its end to snatch somebody from the jaws of death, and not even the blizzards of the Llano could keep her from the appointed place where a baby was to be delivered. Es verdad, my father nodded. She tended me at the birth of my sons. And then I knew her eyes glanced briefly at my father. Gabriel, we cannot let her live her last days in loneliness. No, my father agreed. It is not the way of our people.